I come from the land down under. Hey, y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out Down Under by Men at Work is more upsetting than you thought.
This song is one of the most fun, most silly, and most quotable songs ever written. It's Australia's unofficial national anthem, especially if you're not actually down under. Oh, I've been wanting to cover this song for so long. It's such a brilliant tune.
I love this song. Yeah, when I was a little kid, this was one of my favorite songs. It is fun. I can't imagine what upsetting story is behind it.
But actually has a really complex story behind it. The funny thing is, it wasn't really meant as a flag-waving ode to Australia's greatness. And the background of this song is not as fun as you'd think. It actually gets really, really dark. Fans of the band will know the certain irony that singer Colin Hay is in fact from Glasgow.
But wait, if you're originally from Scotland, when you sang that song, Do You Come From a Land Down Under, you should have said, not originally.
That's right. But it didn't really, I couldn't fit it in, you know.
Well, no,
I didn't know he was from Glasgow.
everyone, do you come from a land down under? Not originally. Yeah.
And he moved to Melbourne when he was 14.
Wow.
So what's it all about then? Well, obviously it's about Australia, or mostly Australians. As most of you know, it follows a man travelling around the world and bumping into fellow Aussies all over the place, like Brussels, Bombay, and somewhere in the outback. On the surface, it seems like an upbeat celebration of good old Aussies, where beer does flow and men chunder. But it's also a reflection of a changing Australia, where women glow and men plunder. Down Under had actually been around for a few years before it was released as the version we know today. Originally it was just something they'd play around with back when the band was just Colin Hay and Ron Strykert, before they even called themselves Men at Work. And there'd even been an early version out for 2 years before it really took over globally. This original version was a bit more reggae and actually featured as the B-side to their first single called Key Punch Operator in 1979. It was slower and a bit looser, and I actually really, really like this version. And you might notice that the iconic flute played by Greg Ham is missing in that version. That's going to become part of the story later on. Anyway, a couple of years later, and armed with more experience and a tightened up sound, they decided to have another look at Down Under. They had a proper record label now and needed singles for an album. They and the label saw Down Under had potential, and maybe they hadn't quite filled it on that original version. So they reimagined it as a bit more up-tempo, upbeat, and closer to a new wave or pub rock sound. And of course, added some catchy parts like that flute. And actually, fun fact, you know at the beginning of the music video you see the drummer Jerry Spicer playing some glass bottles? That sound was apparently actually on the original demo tape they built the song on. Ron used to give me these home demos. They were quite inventive. He had a little bass and percussion piece. He set up these bottles filled with different levels of water in them, and he would play these wee bottles as percussion and put a little bass line over the top of it. It was very trance-like. I became obsessed with it and I'd listen to it all the time. So it was released as a single shortly before their debut album, Business as Usual, was released in November 1981.
Okay, wait, hang on. Original 1980 version. Then they got a record deal and they pulled that one back up and reimagined it. Okay, that makes sense. Now, that makes sense, right? That's what you do.
So it was released as a single shortly before their debut album, Business as Usual, was released in November 1981. And in Australia, it was a hit straight away. It went to #1 and stayed there for 2 weeks. And the album did even better, 9 weeks at #1, helped by other singles like Who Can It Be Now, which also hit #1, and Be Good Johnny, which cracked the top 10. So at home, in Australia, they were phenomenally successful. The international release was delayed until early 1982.
I remember hearing that they won. I think they won Best New Artist at the Grammys or something like that. They were a big deal. Everybody thought they were going to be the next big thing.
But was equally successful. #1 in the US for Down Under, and for the album. In Canada, it was the same, and perhaps even more popular. It did really well in the UK too. And then something unprecedented happened.
There it is. Won the America's Cup in 1983. A 132-year tradition is over.
For those of us outside the US and Australia who have no idea what the America's Cup is, this apparently is like the holy grail of yacht racing. Held by the New York Yacht Club for 132 continuous years.
So I guess if it's a yacht club, they're probably pretty uptight, rich people, I would imagine.
Until the Aussies stole it from right under their noses.
Awesome.
And this, for some reason, was a massive deal in Australia. In the huge media parades after this happened, Down Under emerged as the soundtrack to their victory. So much so that it's often confused as being written for and about that victory. But obviously it wasn't. But it did become a symbol of celebrating Australia for the rest of the world. But what most people miss is the underlying message in the lyrics about the Americanization, as the band saw it, of Australia. By the way, I should mention, if you like my channel and you want even more, you might be interested in having a look at my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/musicmongoose.
You'll be sure to go to Music Mongoose and like and subscribe.
I'd really appreciate it. So, underneath the fun and chunder is a hidden, more serious take on Australia. But the verses are really more the fun parts, celebrating the fun of bumping into his kinsman abroad. And if you've done a bit of travelling yourself, you know that Aussies love finding each other in other countries. But it's the chorus which is deeper. It suddenly goes from laid-back, harmless fun to something a lot more serious.
Do you come from a land down under, where women glow and men plunder? Can't you hear the thunder? You better run, you better take cover.
The choruses were really more about trying to warn people of the fact that there was a lot of people trying to destroy the uniqueness of the place. Whether it's cutting down forests, coastal desecration, not really understanding the indigenous populations of Australia, what had happened to them and continued to happen to them. And you've got to remember the context of the time. In the early 80s, Australia was really experiencing massive deforestation and massive coastal development everywhere. Massive blocks of coastline were being bought up by development companies and turned into apartment blocks and holiday resorts. A lot of native Aussies were rightly outraged at the natural destruction. And then there's the mining industry. Australia is one of the world's biggest producers of uranium, coal and iron ore. And in the early 80s, mining companies were going full bore on exploiting these natural resources. And I think we all know about the awful treatment Aboriginal Aussies have had over the decades, much of which was never even publicly acknowledged until quite recently.
I don't know about it. I don't know about that. Dispossession of land when Britain colonized Australia in 1788 declared the land terra nullius, land belonging to no one, ignoring the fact that Aboriginal peoples had lived there for over 60,000 years. This led to widespread seizure of land without treaties or compensation, destroying traditional ways of life tied deeply to a specific country. Violence and massacres. Frontier expansion involved extreme violence. Thousands of Aboriginal people were killed in massacres, poisoned, or shot, often with little to no legal consequence for perpetrators. Many of these events were ignored or denied for generations. Forced removal of children. From the 1800s to the 1970s, governments forcibly removed Aboriginal children from their families to be raised in institutions by white families. The aim was assimilation. This caused lasting trauma, loss of language and culture, and deep intergenerational harm. Oh my God. Legal discrimination and lack of rights, cultural suppression, ongoing inequality and racism. Wow. Delayed recognition and reconciliation. Aboriginal Australians were dispossessed of their lands, subjected to violence, denied basic rights, had their children taken, and saw their culture suppressed. The consequences of these policies continue to affect communities today. Wow. I mean, oh my gosh. I guess somewhere in the back of my mind, maybe I've heard about that, and I'm not surprised by the racism and all that stuff, but I didn't know they were taking their children.
So he hid it well under a jaunty tune, but he was actually making quite an astute commentary on the landscape at the time. Thunder is his metaphor for trouble. Trouble is coming. Take cover. But there's one more very sad piece of the puzzle to this song. In 2009, men at work were accused of...
Hang on. Yo, my dog wanted to come sit in my lap. He's just I heard a little whimper, so here he is. This is Gregory.
Sad piece of the puzzle to this song. In 2009, men at work were accused of plagiarizing that signature flute piece.
But now the federal
really?
court has ruled that the song copied a substantial part of another Australian classic. Kookaburra sits in the old gum tree.
Oh,
the company, which
come
owns the
on.
copyright to that song, is now poised to receive millions in royalties.
It's like a traditional folk song.
Larrikin originally asked for up to 60% of the royalties.
It's different enough. Damn it.
Larrikin originally asked for up to 60% of the royalties, but even the judge thought that was absurd. It was mitigated down to 5%, but it wasn't about the money for the band, particularly Greg Ham, who played the flute on that song. The band were outraged, and Greg was devastated. Colin Hay was outspoken, arguing that the flute riff was an added part and not part of the original composition, and therefore a coincidence and not intentional lifting. It's no surprise that in over 20 years no one noticed the reference to Kookaburra.
Hang on. Okay, he wanted to get down. All right.
It's no surprise that in over 20 years no one noticed the reference to Kookaburra. There are reasons for this. It was inadvertent, naive, unconscious, and by the time Men at Work recorded the song, it had become unrecognisable.
Yeah.
It was a milestone case in the world of music copyright. But the real tragedy here is Greg Ham. He was devastated by the ruling, feeling that his reputation was completely tarnished, and he sadly fell into deep depression, allegedly abusing drugs and alcohol, although only the people there can really know what happened. His partner and friends have publicly stated that the case took a massive toll on him. His mental and physical health declined rapidly, and in 2012 he was tragically found dead at home, aged just 58.
Oh my
No
gosh.
official cause of death was released, but the case was treated as non-suspicious. There was much deeper speculation that his death could have been from an accidental overdose, or even suicide, but again, this hasn't ever been confirmed. Such a tragedy, and all because of a case of plagiarism that really shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah.
Now, how about a story of actual plagiarism?
Damn.
Possibly the greatest rip-off in music history.
Ice Ice
Vanilla
Baby?
Ice versus Queen and David Bowie. You can click here for that one next.
Y'all, I reacted to that, and it's very interesting. Be sure to go to Music Mongoose and like and subscribe. Greg Ham. Poor guy. That sucks. Oh, man. Lawsuit and plagiarism accusation. Way to go, Larrikin Records. You killed somebody. Ham was found dead on 19th of April 2012 at his home in Carlton, North Melbourne. Several newspapers listed the cause as a heart attack. Friends of Ham had told newspapers that he had a long battle with H-word addiction, which had escalated after the Kookaburra trial. It is known that he was depressed and suffering anxiety over the copyright lawsuit filed against him and the members of Men at Work for alleged similarities between Kookaburra and the flute riff in Down Under. Man, wow. I wasn't expecting that. Who is this Larrikin Records? I want to boycott them. What else do they own? Eric Bogle, Sirocco, Micah Michelle Jackson, Bobby McLeod, Kev... I've heard of none of their artists, and that's probably why they brought up the lawsuit, because they weren't making any money. Y'all, no matter how hard things get, don't be sad. Easy to say, but you know what I mean. It can always get better. It's all about perspective, right? Shift your perspective, right? Gregory, shift your perspective. It's okay. Everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be fine. Well, I'd like to thank my patrons. I'd like to thank my Buy Me a Coffee folks. Thank y'all for watching this with me, and I'll see y'all next time.